Hey Cam, here's an audio test on Zoom.
Cool. Yeah.
Yep.
Just coming
through on.
The speakers. No laptop, so we're getting more TV.
Can you make sure the TV is muted?
Yes, I will do so. And it is.
Just to let you know, we started with it last night, and it was because that computer was not muted. If you ever run into that when I'm not here.
That's really weird because it looked like it was muted on Windows. So very interesting.
Yeah, it showed up in Zoom as the microphone being on. It took me a little while to troubleshoot it.
Okay. Alrighty.
That's the place I would look first if you ever have that trouble. Is I look at the participants and see which mics and which cameras are on.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okie dokie. Did we test the HDMI floor?
I did, but it did work last night.
Okay.
So probably okay.
Yep.
Thanks, man.
No problem.
Hi, Anna. This is Tom from Cable TV. Can you say hi?
Hi, Tom. Can you hear me okay?
Just wanted to hear you. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Hi, Anna.
How are you, Cecilia?
We must have the same cold.
Oh, it's just like, do you have a sore throat?
No, I just had a stuffy nose and some coughing and sneezing, but I just went through a box of tissues yesterday, so I didn't come in. I had to take the day off.
Yeah, same. I was like, I don't really want to be in a small room with many people. Like, I don't think they'll be happy about that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think only Wayne is in. I'm going to go check to see what the situation is.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Cecilia.
That was bigger than a keyboard. It was a piano, but it was not big. Oh, wonderful.
From town council.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So I have a little bit of a cold.
Oh, okay.
So I'll be joining on Zoom too. I'll be in the building, but I'll just be on the station now.
Oh, okay.
It's better now. Yesterday it wasn't right. So getting cold.
Yeah,
Good,
good.
how are you? Good.
I just figured nobody here wants to say that to me.
Oh, okay.
But what we will need to do
Yeah,
is wait for Sam.
yeah.
We didn't get?
We will, when somebody is joining from Zoom and needs to talk,
Yeah.
somebody will have to adjust the volume here of the live spot.
And adjusted to when they start talking?
Yeah.
Sit here.
Okay.
I got it. Slide my name over.
Hi. Can you hear that? So whoever sits here when somebody from Zoom.
I'm sorry, did I hear
Yeah, then
No.
turn this volume.
I'll just sit here because I like sitting on the end.
Okay.
Just on this little knob.
Barroom habit.
Inches the volume.
Look for the quick exit. Oh, when everybody else starts the fight, I'm not getting in trouble. I'm leaving.
When you're taking a vote, give us 2 seconds.
Didn't get in barroom fights. Made sure I didn't.
I've never done either.
Watched a lot of them, but didn't get in any.
Yeah.
I think Robert will be here. Chris is waiting for Robert to,
he can sign in, swear in. So if he arrives.
Oh, look, here he comes.
Oh, there you go. All right.
All right, halt, right here. Raise your right hand. Yes.
So
I, Robert Ball, do swear.
I, Robert Ball, do swear.
That I will support the
Apparently, I'm gonna be,
Constitution
somebody's gotta give me very specific instructions.
Okay.
of this state,
And of the state,
so long as I shall
so long as I shall.
continue a citizen of the Commonwealth. I do swear
I swear. That I will faithfully discharge
all the duties
all the duties
as a member of the planning board,
of the planning board
to serve according to the Constitution
to serve
Or just for our own company.
and the laws of the state,
and the laws of the state.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Zoom calls.
You got it.
Woo! I got two.
Thank God. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Robert, I was explaining to them that I have a little bit of a cold, so
That's
I'm
muted and the camera
they're on Zoom.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. All right, well, I hope you feel better.
Yeah, if you guys need anything, let me know.
Okay.
Shout out, I'll be right there.
Thanks. Sorry I was late.
Yeah, so I don't have it working currently, but that's to flash at you when you don't remember your microphone.
Just do your oath.
Yeah.
She just snagged me.
Running a tight ship here.
I mean, this is really.
It's not currently working, but, because I'm having troubles with the network, but it will be eventually, and we'll do a test and I'll show it to you.
So I'm not crazy, so I'm like some.
It's not, you're not crazy.
I might be.
You might be, but not about that.
That's not the gift to tell.
If you want to say hi to your Zoom guest to see if she can hear you,
And can you hear us?
your microphone needs to be on.
It is on. Hey, Anna, can you hear us?
All right, I'll go check and see.
It says that the Zoom call is muted.
But the Zoom call is getting your microphones.
No, but I'm saying the whole Zoom is muted.
No, that computer is muted.
Oh, I see.
So we're just looking at the picture from that computer on this screen. That's the only reason why that's there, is for you to see the people that you're talking to. Everything else is happening through your microphones. So I will go and double check that we can hear and see her. So that little black box, the first knob closest to you,
Yeah.
that's her volume.
Okay.
Be right back.
But she's not, everything's in the meeting.
No, she can't hear us.
He's just
But he's saying that, the fact that thing.
Yeah, that represents this computer, not,
Yes.
I trust he's right.
Sometimes they would make things work. Assuming signals and patching systems together, you just, it really makes sense.
Can you try talking to Anna now for me?
Anna, can you hear us?
Now I can, thank you.
Oh, good.
Very good.
All right, give me 30 seconds and we'll be ready to go.
For the record.
Great, thank you.
What about Cecilia? I mean, I know
She's on there as well.
but is she, Cecilia, can you hear us?
Guys, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Great.
Start in 30 seconds.
All right, let's put more than 30 seconds. I think everybody who is going to be here, actually, everybody's here.
Yeah.
Everybody's here, great. It is my pleasure to call to order the Wednesday, April 5th meeting of the Freeport Planning Board. It is 6 or a couple minutes after. Welcome, everyone. Item number 1, as usual, is the information exchange. An update on the Freeport Downtown Vision Plan Implementation Task Force. The task force met, what was it, a week ago, 2 weeks ago maybe? And We got some updates. There's some exciting stuff in the world of EV chargers. There is, let's see, what else we talk about? Oh, geez. There were sort of a list of updates. Mitch was there also to talk a little bit about housing. I'm sure we'll hear more about that. Well, we'll hear a lot more about that tonight, because that's basically what we're talking about tonight is housing, over a couple of agenda items. We also talked about moving the meetings to quarterly meetings. I think we're not going to do that quite yet, but at some point the downtown vision plan implementation task force meetings may move to quarterly as we get into the nuts and bolts of the work, but it's always good to hear what everybody else in town is working on. Cecilia, do you have anything to add to that? And then if not, I would move right to sub-item 2, which is an update on the Freeport Climate Action Plan, because you know quite a bit more about that than I do.
Sure. So I don't have anything to add to the downtown task force because I wasn't there at the last meeting, so I kind of missed that one. In terms of the update for the climate action plan, so as you may have heard, we partnered with GPCOG to do a climate action plan. They've been working on an emissions inventory that's going to look at the whole town-wide or general greenhouse emissions, and also doing a vulnerability assessment to see which areas of town are vulnerable to climate impacts from climate change. They're going to be gathering this information, and there's going to be a public workshop on May 15th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Freeport Community Center. So mark your calendars. During this workshop presentation, they're going to show us their findings, and the public will have opportunity to comment, and they'll also be running a survey. Another great news on the sustainability front is that we hired a sustainability coordinator, Maddie Smith, and she is going to be starting on May 1st.
What's her name?
Maddie Smith? Maddie. Sorry, I'm a little congested because I had a cold, so my pronunciation is a little off. We're not related, though. That's just so you know. And she will be working with us for at least a year. That position was grant funded. She will be with Freeport part-time and with Yarmouth the other part-time as well. And yeah, we look forward to having her start and having this workshop. And that's an update on that. Oh, please, if anyone has any trouble accessing information that we have on our website about the climate action plan, please give the town planning department a phone call and we can help you out. Or if you need any printed materials, just let me know.
Cecilia, that's Monday, May 15th?
Yes, Monday, May 15th from
Okay.
6 to 8 at the community. Oh, and I forgot to add, there will be opportunity for remote participation. So if you, for any reason, can't be at the meeting in person, feel free to join.
There will be, you're saying?
There will be,
Okay.
yes. It'll be running as a hybrid meeting.
The meeting's here?
It's at the
Freeport Community
Yep.
Services.
Okay,
yep, down the hill.
got it.
Close. All right. Mitch, sub-item number 3, I believe, goes to you for an update on the housing working group.
Yeah, so the Housing Working Group hasn't met since our last meeting, except for a brief get-together before the Project Review Board meeting on the housing project on West Street. But we meet again next Wednesday this time.
Okay.
So I'll have more of a report. You heard at the, I don't know if there's a report on the conversation that we had with the council. You sort of mentioned briefly, but Andrew was there, and
Yep.
and you were there. And we talked a bit about the importance of housing and how that affects our work.
Yes.
And it keeps coming back to moving forward on the comp plan and the design review ordinance.
Yep. And to that end, just to bring this group into the loop, I said a little bit about my personal thoughts on the council's, or my desire for the council to, give some leadership and sort of help us work through and help the community work through what are bound to be some contentious issues around changing these design guidelines, and, hopefully they can help us lead the way. Not saying they need to do it themselves, but I think, there are going to be times where we need to.
There's not unified consensus across the
Yep.
community
Exactly.
of what we should do. I mean, there's very loud voices on two opposing sides.
Yeah, and there will never be perfect consensus. So I don't think that's the goal. I think, identifying some good goals to aim for as a community, and identifying a good path forward that feels like, a good compromise, while not hopefully.
Steps.
Yeah. So, I think there are going to be some interesting discussions and some hard discussions ahead. And, I've said it here before, I've said it to the council before, but I said it again to the council. So,
Just one more sentence, which is, one of the things we talked about is that as those comp plans are developed, it needs to have an inclusive community participation workshop kind of stuff like the Freeport Vision did, because that's moved forward with general sense that there is community consensus.
That's the whole point, right? And then there should be less arguments,
Then there's-
because we're following the comp plan.
That-
And everyone had a say, and then that's our.
So we have to imagine that we're going to go through that process.
Until it gets to your neighborhood.
right. I think I hear that, and I think, yes, that will happen, and it needs to happen. But I think this is why I keep bringing this up, is that I don't expect there to be like some kumbaya moment at the end of it. I think there's, I think we're going to need to, like I said, identify the goals and accept that the goals are not going to be perfect. We're not going to walk away with 100% of the people happy 100% of the time. And hopefully everybody feels like they're being listened to, because I think that is certainly the goal. That's always my number one goal, is make sure that, all of the voices are heard. That doesn't mean that everybody's going to get everything. So that's my.
Just to be more specific, I'm curious if you know what like the top 3 contentious issues are.
I see density, parking, rate of growth. I know all those are related to each other, but I think, right, identifying the growth areas in town. And I think aesthetics are going to come into it too. I think that's a big, what is the character? And it's all sort of wrapped up together. I see the character of the downtown depends very much on the density. If we're building a much denser downtown, then, other things are going to follow from that. We may end up with structured parking. We may end up with, who knows? But I think, in finding a way to balance aesthetics, it's going to be tricky. How do we find a way to provide enough structure that developers can come to a meeting of the project review board with a good understanding of what it is they're supposed to be drawing and what's going to get approved, without making it so expensive by saying everybody has to have this and this and this, and you can only use brick, and you can only use all the most expensive materials and the most expensive windows, and everything has to be aluminum clad, and everything has to be true divided light. I mean, developers they're not even going to come if we say all that stuff. So I think
there's not that many coming now.
Yeah, right. So it's
one of the vision principles was to speed up. One of our own missions was to figure out how to make that process.
Right.
Well, more clear, I see.
More clear is the best way.
Faster,
that
but more
protects
clear.
the community and it helps the developers.
Yep. So, So anyway.
One thing issue, I think the rate of change is speeding up. And I think that's where there's concern for a lot of folks. Things are, it's natural, but it's.
Well, and let's be clear, there's, one side, wants to have a more diverse housing stock so that older people and younger people in particular can afford to live here. And another side does not want that. One side thinks that more housing will protect our downtown and make it more commercially viable, and another side does not believe that. I'm not saying that's all one side or another.
Right.
Those are the issues. There'd be issues like that.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I think that's all spot on. And a lot of this is going to come up in our agenda items for tonight too, where we have some of these discussions. So, Cecilia, do you mind giving us a report on items reviewed by the PRB since our last meeting?
Sure, absolutely. So Ella Bean Penthouse Edition was approved. That was for building modifications at they're building in 95 Main Street. The Freeport Village Apartments, that's for multiple family dwellings on 22 Main Street. That was also approved. That's going to be for 30-unit dwelling units in 2 buildings. There was another application that was approved for a site plan review for a change of use from residential to commercial sales at 43 Old South Freeport Road. That's for Love Point Oysters. And then there was another site plan amendment and for an approved, which was approved for a parking lot extensions for a main optometry. And that's it.
At 22 Main Street, is that the one adjacent to here?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes,
It was approved.
Yep.
yeah, that was the final subdivision approval.
Where's the oyster company one?
Yeah, so that is on 43 Old South Freeport Road.
Is that right by
It's
the
across
church?
from the Y.
Oh, yeah, I know
Oh,
who
okay.
that
Sorry.
is. Yep.
Oh,
Across from the
Well,
Y.
sort of,
Sort of,
up from the
Yeah.
Y.
yeah,
Huh, in that little triangle there?
in the
Yeah, the first
triangle.
house right in the triangle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, all right. I was way off. All right, update on the status of current and future planning board projects. Cecilia, you want to take us through that as well?
Sure. Okay, so for the comp plan and design review RFP, I think, Sam, you might have a better update from the workshop.
Yes, fair enough. I can take those two if you want. We had, so, does everybody know that Caroline has been appointed the interim town manager?
Yep.
Did we talk, okay. So that is going to change some things, I think, for the planning board in the short to medium term, move a couple things around on our schedule a little bit. She has a lot, I mean, everybody, I think, in the town office has a lot on their plates, it's fair to say. But I think Caroline in particular has had, and then I think, I'm sure it will trickle down to Cecilia as well. So the RFPs that are going out for the design review updates and the comprehensive plan, that timeline is potentially getting pushed back a little bit. I don't have the latest. Caroline and I talked last, well, it was probably about 10 days ago now, about trying to get at least one of those RFPs out before she took over, but she takes over effectively end of day tomorrow. So I don't know the latest. You know, we're still
Is there
hoping.
any way we can help her?
It's tough at this point. I think she has a lot of time into it, and the RFPs have technical requirements that, at least speaking for myself, are way over my head. I think we can review them when they are ready to send off, just as a proofreading or a set of, extra sets of eyes, if that's something that she thinks would be helpful. But at this point, I think it unfortunately mostly falls to her and Cecilia to get those things out the door. So, yeah, like I said, I don't have the latest, but as of 10 days ago, we were still trying to get them done by the end of this week, which is tomorrow. So by next meeting, we'll definitely have a better idea of how that went. The idea,
Presumably in a draft form at that point.
well, I think ready to push out into the world with the intent on hiring a consultant, choosing a consultant, at least for the design review project, within 30 days, and hopefully getting the public process started later in the spring or in the summer. The idea is to get some public outreach and really have it, wrapped up. The funding kicks in, I believe, on June 30th. So have that project, ready to go for when the money's there. Try to get some public input over the summer, and then really dive into our portion of it, which, the nitty-gritty of reviewing the language that the consultants draft and everything. That would happen hopefully later in the summer and the fall. But like I said, this appointment, while it's great for Caroline, I think, and great for the town that she's willing to do it, because she's been here 20 years or more than that, maybe. She has the institutional knowledge, and I'm sure she'll do a great job. But obviously, there's a lot on her plate. So that's what's going on with those two right now. The other one I know something about, because we've talked about it, is the cannabis, just in case anyone's interested. We heard, I think was it last meeting? We had a comment wondering about where where that is in the process. The ordinance committee of the council needs to take that up. And they have not yet, as far as I know, unless they have in the last week. So
Is that just a time thing with them, or is it?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Not a controversial thing or anything?
Not as far as I'm aware. I think it's just a scheduling issue. I don't remember where Dan mentioned. So somewhere in the public record, there's a mention of when he put it on the schedule, but I don't remember what
Real
it
quick,
is.
Caroline's, her status, is this just interim, just for the foreseeable future?
It's interim. There will be a search process. My understanding is that it's 3 to 6 months, but on the other hand, before Peter agreed to, or went, signed up to go to York and be their town manager, I know they were on their second selection process, the first one having been unsuccessful. So that's a possibility as well, that the town goes out, finds a bunch of candidates, decides that maybe there isn't quite the perfect fit yet. And so, the timeline, I think, is a bit of an unknown at this point. It's, the job market for town managers seems like it's no less tight than for
everything else.
baristas, whatever the construction workers.
As far as we know, Caroline intends to be town planner again?
Yes.
She will also retain her title as town planner, so she will continue to be the town planner in addition to the interim town manager. And the other, the financial pieces of it, I think, are staying in the finance department, so she can more focus on, to keep some time for planning, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So hopefully, she will continue to be the planner. She'll just be operating at a reduced capacity. Do you have something else, Andy?
I forgot.
Okay. No worries. So Cecilia, are there other projects that I didn't cover or haven't covered yet?
Sure. So as we are updating the zoning ordinance with those changes for site plan 602, and we'll be uploading those to the website soon, which means that I'm going to have to print out new zoning ordinances for your binders. So just keep in mind that those amendments are now valid, and that's what they will be going by when the project review board reviews the project. Those changes to parking lots on BC1, that has been sent to the town council. They did set up a public hearing, and that is scheduled for April 25th. And in terms of the subdivision, we just a couple days ago got the first kind of draft of that legal review. There is so much more that they need to incorporate and work into that, in addition to things related to LD 2003. So that might take a while until it goes back to you folks, those amendments or cleanup work of the subdivision ordinance. And then finally, I know C1, it needs to be cleaned up, but we don't really have time to work on that at the moment. So that kind of is also on the back burner. I also just wanted to remind you that at the next meeting, the planning board should be having their elections for officers.
Didn't we just do that?
Didn't we just do that?
We did that.
That's what Caroline told me, so I was just.
He's confused. I'm
Yeah, we
pretty
did that a couple.
I mean, there could be some technical reason that we have to redo it that
Maybe
I'm not aware of, but it feels like it, or maybe just we're in the post-COVID time warp and I
No, we just did it a while
just
ago.
did it. Okay, all right.
Okay, so I'll
A couple months ago.
clarify that one. Then.
Okay.
We'll do it again next year.
Yep. Okay. Item number 2 is a review of the minutes of the March 1st meeting, or if there are no proposed changes, a motion to approve as written.
I had a question on page 2, the average rents are $300.
Oh, that's probably not true.
They just,
I did not notice that. Yeah.
All right, so usually Sharon brings me the minutes and I have some time to do some proofing, but this time we were running a little behind, so I did catch some things such as the rent one. We could, I believe what Mitch said was $2,300 maybe.
2,300.
Mitch.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have I think it was probably $2,300 is the average rent. That's right.
That sounds
Although
right.
interestingly, well, we'll talk about it later when we get to LD 2003.
So does it make sense to table that until the next meeting, once we can clean up a couple of those? I don't even know how, I don't think we've ever tabled any. We can motion to table and then
You could do that.
Approve it?
I mean,
do I hear a motion to table the
Approval of the minutes.
approval of the minutes?
Second.
Who made the motion?
Oh, you can't.
I can't. Yeah,
A
sorry.
Motion to table the approval of the minutes for March 1st, 2023.
Are there, well, hold on. Before we do that,
Yeah.
Cecilia, are there others really minor ones? Can we approve them with a couple of noted changes, or is there anything substantive that you caught?
Oh, she hasn't reviewed them.
Oh, I thought she said she had reviewed them.
Yeah, I think they're kind of minor. It's just more like clarification things and just like, I think it's hard for Sharon because, she's not familiar with the acronyms and like lingo we're using. So, it might be ED instead of EB or ACU instead of ADU. So it's not.
Let's just table. it.
Yeah, right, because we can't really approve it and then.
Yeah, then we're going to table.
All right,
too
all
much
right.
work to go
So we
back.
have a motion to table, and we have a second. All in favor?
Yes.
All right.
Oh, Anna.
Oh, sorry, Anna. Jeez. Oh, because Anna's here, we actually have to do a roll call. So on the proposed motion to table the approval of the meeting minutes from March 1st, Andrew, you have to
Yes.
say your vote. Yeah, okay, sorry. Wayne,
Yes.
Robert,
Yes.
chair votes yes.
Yes, Rosemary?
Rosemary
Yes.
and Mitch and Anna.
Yeah, sorry y'all, but at least you're not catching my cold.
No worries. Easy enough to run down the line.
The date uncertain? Next meeting.
Next meeting.
Next meeting.
Yep. Next meeting. All right. Item number 3, an overview of Maine LD 2003, introductory overview to LD 2003, which is, quote, an act to implement the recommendations of the commission to increase housing opportunities in Maine by studying zoning and land use restrictions. Pithy, as always. Great. Cecilia, do you mind taking us through a high-level overview before we get into some discussion?
Sure. I don't know if it's easier to just kind of look at the information on the screen. So I was just going to share my screen with you guys if you want.
That'd be helpful. We did look through the pamphlet. I'm sure everybody did, but I don't know, is that the final? I'm trying to figure out, have they figured out the final yet?
Sure. So let me just give a little update on what we know so far is that, so the language that I gave you a couple of documents. One of them is LD 2003 itself. So that's the law, the language of it. I gave you that state guide, which kind of like tries to help us break it down and better understand it. They had released one, last year, but they recently updated. So I just wanted to make sure you guys read this new one because they clarified some things. And then I added some things which I hope didn't make it further confusing, which was that notice of agency rulemaking, which they clarified some things, but not everything that we needed clarified, and a document by the town attorneys going over a lot of the unanswered questions that they have about the rules. So the state hasn't really finalized the rulemaking. We don't know really when that's going to happen. It was supposed to happen just about now. There are a couple of public hearings set up via Zoom. I think they're going to be having these, maybe a few of them. But so far, we're supposed to proceed as LD 2003 will take place on July 1st of this year. So
But how do you proceed if you don't know the rules?
yeah, so I think municipalities are kind of left in having to just kind of thread their own territories with this. Yeah, it is a little difficult. But yeah, it is what it is. And I know there's been 2 bills proposed, one that would limit it for, to be applicable only to municipalities of certain sizes, and another one to postpone the starting date. But as far as we know, there hasn't been any public hearing set for those, and it might not happen. So, so the message is to just thread ahead.
So is this document going to be is this the document that's going to be in existence, or is this up for change?
It hasn't been approved, is what I'm hearing.
It's apt to change somewhat, I think.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to figure out, like, what exactly, we get the point, but, like, what exactly do we have to do differently and by when?
Yeah, I think some of the questions that remain
We saw that-
unanswered
Yeah, go ahead.
is like knowing, more like nitty-gritty details that there's been a lot of, the language is still ambiguous or not clear or contradicts in some places. And it might be that the legislature needs to amend it, or they might give power to the DECD to do their rulemaking, but right now they don't really have that. So I guess the issue that that we're all having is that, as you saw on that document from the town attorneys, there are a lot of questions.
So yeah, but
How do we plug this in? That's what I'm.
yeah, I'm trying to. There's a couple things that I'm trying to figure out. Like, what is a growth area for us?
Oh,
Do we
sure,
have
I can answer
growth
that.
areas defined?
So the growth area, we identified the growth area in our 2011 comprehensive plan. So we specified already which zones those are in.
What
So
are
we
they?
I can pull out a map and show you. It's basically pretty much all the districts along US Route 1.
Including the north side,
Yes, MDA, MDB.
MDA and MDB and
Yeah, C1 and everything in between.
and okay. And so it's only in those areas that, can I ask a few questions that I just don't understand from reading this document and see if, so one thing is, in those areas, suddenly, anything that's single family, any single lot could be developed to 4 units. Is that what this is saying?
So yes and no. Why don't we walk through this together so
Okay.
that, let me share my screen. Let me see if I can make this work. Okay, so let me pull out, okay. And make, all right, can everyone see this on the screen?
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna do this, we're gonna hopefully go through some of your questions, Mitch, and questions that maybe other board members have. I did have a really hard time myself to wrap my head around LD 2003. It's almost one of those things that the more you read it, the more you have questions. And there are a lot of different pieces to it. So I think because it's so many things attached to one document, it's kind of hard to keep track of everything that's going on. But basically LD 2003 is, it's a legislative reaction to the housing crisis that we're experiencing in Maine. And so the state created this commission to increase housing opportunities. They studied barriers to the production of new housing. And LD 2003 is kind of, was developed because of those recommendations. There are, I guess, these 5 different elements to it. There's a municipal role in fair housing and statewide housing production. This is basically about non-discrimination. This is actually already in effect, and I don't have anything to add to it. It also clarifies that municipalities can regulate short-term rentals. I guess we already were doing that, and there's nothing to add to that as well. And then there's these three other pieces that we're going to focus on tonight. So there's the affordable housing density bonus, there's the extra dwelling units allowance, and accessory dwelling units allowance. And I'll walk you through each one of these. So the affordable housing density bonus, it's a density bonus for affordable housing of 2.5 times the base density. So if you allowed one dwelling per 1 acre, now you're going to allow 2.5 if it's an affordable housing development. It also, another requirement of this that's pretty significant is that there's these, what I would consider parking reductions. So you can only allow up to 2 parking spaces for every 3 units. So we are going to have to update our parking ordinance to reflect this.
So who lives in the half unit?
No, it would just be, multiplied in the.
It means you could build 10 to the acre on a 4 to the acre
Yeah,
parcel.
Oops. Sorry,
Does it revert to the lower or the higher number? Like if you did, if you had an acre.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to answer that without being sure.
That may be really.
But I would assume it would round down, but I'm not entirely sure. We can ask, it might be one of those things that they haven't clarified yet.
Right. And
It would
is still-
typically round down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would typically be that you have to have,
whatever's less. But I wonder, where does lot coverage come into this? Is that going to come in? Are you going to talk about that, Cecilia?
We don't really.
'Cause that's that's like on
All right.
my lot.
That's the number.
That's the,
italics.
I don't think I could build another.
I think it has
Because
said that it doesn't, that the lot, that we still can control that. Is that correct?
Yes. Hold on.
It's a
I'll get to
toothless.
certain aspects, the ones that we know about that.
Okay.
So one thing I want to point out is that the affordable housing density bonus is not allowed throughout. There's like a recipe for where this density bonus for affordable housing will take place. And it's on areas that already allow multifamily dwellings, or that allow multifamily dwellings. We can always change that. And it's also on designated growth areas or areas served by water and sewer. So this is an either or situation, which is not going to be applicable to another section. So this is a map of our designated growth areas according to the 2011 comprehensive plan. Right, so you see it's like pretty much through US Route 1. And there's also the area served by water and sewer, and I'm sorry, we don't really have a good map of those, so we don't have that data set. Hopefully we will sometime soon so that we can show those areas too, but not many areas that are not in the growth area that have water and sewer allow multifamily. So in the future, like I said, this is a high level overview, but when we come back, hopefully we will have some more Freeport specific details for you.
Is multifamily permitted in the rural zone? I thought it was.
Two
No?
families are, I think.
That's not multi.
Yeah,
No.
correct.
Got it. Okay. So basically,
They have 1.5 acres per
80%
unit
of
in the
Freeport
rural.
won't. Okay. Yep.
Well, yeah, and I would have to look at the ordinance too. Unfortunately, we don't have a table of use, so it's not always so clear because you have those subdivision and cluster development provisions, and it kind of can get a little tricky there. So also, just so folks know, there is an affordability definition, and that's basically that your rent or the cost of your mortgage and insurance and everything, it can't exceed 30% of a person's income. And for rental housing under LD 2003, the affordable is meant to serve those that make up to 80% of the area median income. And for owned housing, it's 120% of the area median income. And I just want to point out that, for folks that might be listening to this and are not familiar what those amounts are. This is what I would consider, workforce housing. It's not, it might not really reach those, low income people.
Could I ask a question right here?
Absolutely.
In order to get that density bonus, assuming you met these 80% AMI or 120% on owned housing, and on the owned housing, obviously, there's a 30-year, you have to have a whole program to keep it that way.
Yep.
On the rental, it's much easier because you just have to keep renting it that way. But it doesn't require the entire project, right? What portion of the project?
Hold on, that's the next slide.
Oh, okay.
So,
More than half.
yeah, so more than half, over 50%.
Got it.
And it also needs to be affordable for 30 years, so there needs to be like some kind of deed restriction on that. We don't really know who's going to be enforcing that. And there's also some other questions about the language that's there right now. But so far,
Median
this is
income
kind of what the intent of it is.
at the time of initial occupancy that's potentially because if the median income at the time of the initial occupancy is, say, I don't know, $75,000, but then with inflation, if inflation continues, at 30 years from now, that's going to be nobody.
Specifically addresses
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to clarify, the area median income, which is what they base the affordability on, is
$87,000
updated.
as of 2021 is the number.
Yeah.
It's updated on so the area median income is updated every year by the Maine Housing Authority. It's calculated based on HUD. HUD comes up with this number. It's based on the census, and it's not just for Freeport. So it's an area. So it's basically it's a different type of census defined metropolitan area. So it would be Freeport, Yarmouth, and I don't know, like 12 different. I don't want to I don't have the communities in front of me right now.
So it's not just Freeport's
It
number.
does change.
It's not just
that makes
Freeport.
sense.
So
There'll be a lower,
Right.
there'll be a lower number.
yeah, so right now I think the area median income for our area, which is what they call like the Portland area, is 112, just a little, might be about $112,000 for a family. That would be 100%. So if you look at 80%, then that might be that $89,000 for a family of four. It is also calculated based on the number of people in the family. So for a single person, I believe, and I could be wrong, I think it might be $62,000 each.
Yeah, I was looking at an average, at a median household, so across all those types. But yeah, if they specify it by how many people in the household, then it would be different.
Yeah, and it's updated every year. So yes, it will keep up with inflation. And if somebody moves in, this is at the time somebody moves in. Say somebody moves in and they start to make a lot more money or less money, that would still be considered affordable because at the time they moved in, that's how much, that's what they qualified under. So nobody will get kicked out.
It's like rent control in New York City, where
Who governs this stuff?
for 20 people live in apartments that they've had for 50 years, paying nothing.
Cambridge, same thing.
Yep.
What I don't understand is what's the scale? Like, so you're saying 80% of AMI, so AMI is 100K and you make 80,000.
So
You have to make up to 80,000?
the math is, yeah, you take the 80% of, if it's 100,000, then you take 80%, a person who makes 80,000.
So that
And
person would
it has to be
qualify
affordable for
a
a
rental.
person.
Right, but what's the range in that? Like, they have to make up to 80%, or you have to make exactly 80%? I don't.
You have to set the rent. You have to set the rent.
Right, so the rent
So
can't be
so
more
if it's an $80,000 person, then 30% of that number is their annual rent, including utilities,
So what is that,
which is about
26?
$2,100, $2,000, for rent.
So
But that's,
so what if
but it
you
may be
make
different for
60% of
two-bedroom or
AMI?
three.
You don't qualify?
No, it's
You
not.
just have to offer the apartments for rent at that price.
But Anna, that is a good question, and they don't really get into the specifics on LD 2003, but on affordable housing, where a developer wants to,
You have to
make an
rent it to
affordable housing
those
project
people.
for other people who make less than that, they still could do that. So
Okay.
it's not, it's sort of, you can think about it as a ceiling, not
Yeah, it's a ceiling. They have to be rented to somebody who makes 80% or less.
or less.
That's right.
And for home ownership, then it's 120% of the area median income. So by the time the person buys the house, they would be, if the area median income is,
100,000, and it's
So you could,
120,000.
so then the next step in that progression, and I'm thinking this through myself because I did not fully understand it, but somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But then from there, what I would assume is, so using these numbers, say the rent is $2,100 a month. So that's the math on the 80% AMI, right? $2,100 a month. So then that $2,100 a month, that's the price that the unit is rented for. And as long as it's rented to somebody who makes less than 80,000, it's in compliance. So somebody theoretically then could be spending more than 30% of their income if they say made 50,000. They would be. It's not like the price of the unit would have to be adjusted for.
Their
Is that
income.
It's not right because
I don't think so.
I think it does change. I think you can't, I think no matter what, you can't
If
pay
somebody
more than
comes
30%.
along with 50% of the median income, you don't have to now rent it to them for
for less.
80%
I think
of
that's-
that.
Yeah.
You just have to rent it for a price that 80% can afford
Right.
and rent it to somebody who is at 80%
I think
or
that's the way
below.
because then you get into otherwise you get into housing vouchers type
Yeah,
stuff.
that's
where
the way
you-
those things typically
Okay,
work.
that makes sense. That was my question.
But they get to stay there forever, unless you set up rules that they can't, and most people don't.
Okay. All right.
So you're saying if they make more than 80%?
If the next year they get they double their income,
They're still there
they're
at
still
80%.
there. That's correct, because they were at the time they were rented. And then when they move out, that unit has to be re-rented to somebody under the same standards.
Whatever that AMI is at that time.
At that time, it could be more.
So as a
That's what that.
developer-
Okay. Sorry, my earlier comment was way
So,
off base. Now I see. Yeah.
So as a developer, aren't you going to develop these units to where you're up to the limit? You're
Yeah.
not gonna make $500 a month units, right? You're gonna make.
Well,
You're going to make units that are affordable at that 80% number. You're going to set the initial rent at $2,100,
Yeah.
and you're going to look for somebody who makes 80% or below to rent it.
To rent- who can
And then
afford
you'll
to
be able to raise it every year to that 80% level.
Got it.
That's typically, I've
What
seen this
happens if the
before.
80% goes down?
That's a good
Okay, let's let Cecilia get back to her presentation.
Yeah, right, thank you.
Yeah, this is where I would defer to the housing experts. So maybe somebody like Matt Peters from the Housing Authority or could give some more details on how these dish out. This is just what LD 2003 says. And yes, it does get complicated. So let me go back here to sharing my screen.
Okay.
Okay, so the affordability is for 30 years. All right, so keep in mind, some things to keep in mind, and for most of these, is that these developments still must comply with shoreline zoning. They still need to comply with water and wastewater. Sorry, I have a typo here. The subdivision standards are still valid. Covenant deed restrictions are still valid too. So it's not like you would not, if it's not like they would still have to meet all those requirements. They just get that extra density bonus.
And so that would include setbacks and anything like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can still enforce site plan.
And building heights,
Yeah, it's just a density bonus. You would still have to meet the other,
Yep.
requirements. I don't know if in the process of rulemaking or, as people bring things to court, if things could change. But so far, that's kind of what I know right now, or how I understand it right now. So that's for the affordable housing density bonus. Now there's the extra dwelling units allowance. I found this to be one of the most confusing ones. But let's go to this, all right? So where is the extra dwelling units allowance going to take place? So this is for any area where housing is allowed. You can have, there's a couple of different parameters here, and it depends on if you're in the growth area or not. And well, the language that I have up here is growth area or area served by water and sewer. We do have a growth area identified in our comp plan, so this would apply, you know, so some of these provisions would apply to the growth area and not to area served by water and sewer. So if you have a vacant lot, that means there's no houses on it. You can have 2 houses per lot if it's not in a designated growth area. You can have 4 houses per lot if it is in a designated growth area. And if there's an existing house there in a lot, then you could have 3 houses, or that's up to additional 2 units. So it is a little confusing because there's a lot of different pieces to this. So
We should be using the words dwelling units, not houses, right?
yeah, sure.
Because
Except
it
for it
isn't.
gets a little confusing with the accessory dwelling unit.
Well, yeah, but it seems to say that you can only have you can only have 2 buildings on the site. You could only, right?
I don't know.
2 buildings.
In other words, you have the house, you have an accessory unit, and you can have another accessory unit within attached to the house.
I don't want to call it accessory unit. This is actually
A dwelling unit. A dwelling unit. Let's use the word dwelling unit. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's one thing about this, okay, is that the density requirements still take place. So in a way, you could see that this is not going to be like a huge game changer, right? Because you still have to meet that density requirement for whichever zone you're in. So I think
What do you mean
this
you have to
might-
meet, what density requirement?
So I guess the question that brings up for me, is it like basically a way to circumvent a subdivision approval? Like if you had to say a 10-acre lot in a zone that required 2.5 acres per dwelling unit. Now this is saying you can build multiple dwelling units on this lot without subdividing it? Is that kind of what it's getting at?
So Sam, that's a really good question, and it's still unclear to me what that means.
Well, but could we just take a typical 2-acre lot? And in a 2-acre zoning area, this is the most common zoning in.
Yeah, this is like 80% of Freeport.
80% of
Rural and
Freeport.
2.5 acres is minimum lot size.
Some places it's 1.5, some places it's 2.5, so you 2-acre lot, and there's a house on there. And we already have a rule that says anybody can put an accessory dwelling unit on there, even as a freestanding building, as long as it meets the setback and ground
Yeah,
coverage
and other stuff, yeah.
requirements. But does this now say that they could make it a 3-family and or a 3-family? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Is that what it requires in any 2-acre place, can be or can't be, or only in the growth areas?
I tried to read it, and I
Right.
thought you could add one to the house and have an ADU.
That's the 3. Now it's a
That's the 3.
3.
That's
you
how
got
I read it.
3
On one
dwelling
2-acre
units
lot.
on this
On
2-acre
one lot.
lot.
As long as it's not served by water, sewer, or within a growth area.
In which case you can have 4.
And then, right.
Cecilia, do you have a straightforward answer to
Right.
Is
that?
that right?
Let me see if I understand your question, Mitch. You're asking if somebody has, you know, whatever acre, if they can just put more houses in it regardless of,
Well, specifically,
Assuming, we understand they have to meet the setback requirements, but if they got a 2-acre lot, they have a lot of room, and so can I build a second house on the property? Is that what it's saying? Or,
well, it depends on the zoning. So if our zoning requires 2 acres per dwelling unit, then you cannot, because the dwelling unit per acre, which is our base density, still applies.
But if you
So
had a 6-acre
have a lot that's 4 acres, then you can. But if and we require 2 acres per dwelling, then you can put a second house. But if you have a 2-acre
But how's that
a
going
lot,
with density
you can't
bonus?
put a second house because you don't meet that base density requirement.
It
that
doesn't
we
really
have in our
increase
ordinance.
density. It just
Yeah.
circumvents
It's
your
it's-
ability to have to subdivide.
totally separate from the density bonus. The density bonus is for affordable housing and growth
Yeah,
areas.
and I don't know if this helps too. Here's some language here. So LD 2003 specifically allows the town to establish requirements for lot area per dwelling unit. So as long as the lot area for subsequent dwelling units on a lot is not greater than the required lot area for the first dwelling unit. So
What does that say?
am I sharing my screen?
You are, and we see the extra dwelling units a lot, yeah.
So that means that like if 10,000 square feet per unit is required, you can't require 30,000 for 2 units. You know, if you require 10 for one house, you can't require 30 for 2.
Right,
And
that's where if you have the 6 acres, you can now build 3 houses without, if assuming you're in 2 acre zoning, yeah.
Right, yeah,
You ca-
per lot.
Okay, but that doesn't strike me as a big issue.
Well, it might help if your 6 acres has minimal road frontage, but they still permit you building 3 dwelling units, even though you don't
I really
have
think if it somehow gets around triggering subdivision, that's the biggest, because right now you can't create more than, what is it?
2 lots every 5 years.
Is it 2 additional lots every 5 years? I
You
think,
can
right?
subdivide once every 5 years, right?
Well, yeah, it's 2 lots every 5 years additional to your one lot.
Yeah.
If you do it right, you can get 3. If you
Yeah.
Right,
split it
yeah.
right, you can get 3.
Exactly.
So I think, if you somehow you say whatever, the stars align and you could theoretically build 4 on your lot, then that would, under current rules, trigger subdivision. This is all purely speculative from me right now. But if the rulemaking and it sounds like from what Cecilia said, there's still some questions about this. But if it turns out to be the case that you could build 4 dwelling units without triggering site plan review, that would be a fairly substantial change. If you could imagine like living in a rural area and all of a sudden your neighbor builds 4, I mean,
Well, I think the big question is, though, are the spatial regulations still, do you have to adhere to them? Like, minimum road frontage, I think, is 200 feet. Well, if you've got 6 acres with 250 feet, are you still limited to one lot, one house? Or can you use the
If we have a
rear
road
acreage?
frontage requirement, does that stay or get superseded?
Well, but if you have one driveway in,
Yeah.
it says in here, you don't have to change your driveway. You can drive in the same driveway and park on the lawn, it sounds like to me, when I read through this.
Cecilia,
You're not supposed to provide additional parking. It's not one of those big requirements in here. So one driveway, you just drive by the house and park out back.
Yeah.
And, you add on a couple of units. I mean,
that would take all rear land and make it buildable, which would change,
makes it a back lot issue, in a way.
that would change a lot.
So the parking reduction, let's call it, considering our parking requirements, does not apply to this. As I'm not aware, there's nothing, as you read the bill, that says that we can't require parking. We are still able to require site plan. As far as subdivision, my understanding is that you would still go through subdivision, but a lot of these details are things that we still have questions about and that we still don't know. Like, we don't know how it's going to affect the net acreage calculation, if we'll still be able to use whatever we use for that. This is the part that there's a lot of legal unknowns, and I don't have, unfortunately, I'm not able to give you many answers to this.
Just to clarify, though, under this hypothetical, say your lot is a rectangle, right? So you have a lot of acreage in the back, but you've got minimal road frontage. The amount of road frontage you have dictates that you can have one, even though you got 10 acres, you've only got a little bit of road frontage, so you can only put one dwelling unit on there. Does this say that, well, hey, you've got 10 acres, so you've got plenty of land, even though you've got minimal road frontage, you could just put in a right-of-way to access the back area, and then you can use that land for additional dwelling units?
I don't know.
Would that be?
I don't know how that's going to play out.
Curb cut per lot issue, wouldn't it?
Well, that's what I'm
You
wondering.
could do
because
that now,
That would
couldn't you,
open up
with
a
the-
ton of land that right now is not buildable.
But couldn't you do that now with a subdivision?
You could,
No, if you only got 200 feet
yeah,
of frontage,
I think,
you can't create, you have to buy more frontage to do it.
I think you could put a private road in, and I'm not sure because I haven't really gone through any subdivision application much. But I think you might be able to put a private road in and then create that lot frontage through doing that.
Frontage then becomes off the new road.
Yeah.
That's my understanding of it, but I'm out of my depth on that particular speculation, so.
Yeah, same here. So sorry, Robert, I
No, that's okay. I mean,
I guess-
this is why we're here.
What I'm confused about is all these places where it keeps talking about you can have one home and then suddenly you can have two or three. You're saying that that doesn't change if we have a 40,000, a 2-acre zoning? It doesn't, how does it jive with that?
Right, so for this specific section, the extra dwelling unit allowance, the base density is still valid.
So it's really only talking about the situation where you have a 6-acre lot in a 2-acre zone and the ability to build the other two
Without subdividing.
without.
I'm not sure how the subdivision, my understanding is that subdivision would still apply. I'm not sure about any other detail, and I think that's why
If it
it's
did still
taking
apply,
us so
nothing
long to get
changes.
This is a-
legal.
Yeah, well, because right now there's an explicit prohibition on, or it said there's only one dwelling unit per lot of record, right, in a lot of zoning. So that's what would change, but it seems like a lot of the nitty-gritties about exactly what that would change on a practical level still have to be worked out.
It seems like it would change a ton in the rural areas.
Potentially, but it seems like we don't.
Potentially, but
We
it
don't have all
sounds
the
like to me
information,
that the
yeah.
limiting factor is you still need 2 acres per lot, per house. And so if that's
Yeah.
the case,
If that's-
I don't know what really
In
changes.
the rural zones.
In the rural zones, yeah. You're
So this
still-
is a big
Well, but is it-
TBD. It sounds like.
That's a big
Cecilia,
TBD.
what's the next
Yeah.
the next item?
Okay, hold on. Let's go back here. Right, so, oops. So this is kind of, I don't know if this is helpful, but this is kind of how they dished out. And you had this on that guide.
Yeah.
I guess we don't have to go through this, but, all right. So the next thing that we can discuss
Well, but
today.
wait. One more question on that. So now, if you have a 2-acre lot and it's unbuilt, and we have 2-acre zoning, you can or can't build 2 units there, or 3 and 4.
I'm still not sure about that.
There you go. There's your answer right
Sorry,
there.
need to be in the notes of.
Siri beat us to the punch. Yeah, Cecilia, it seems to me like the density requirement would still supersede this.
I think we sort of need a comparison of what this is recommending with what we have.
Right. That's what we need, is to
Like down on
understand-
Route 1 where I am, in the center strip, you can have 2 acres you can have a 1-acre lot, and I can put a 2-unit on it, a 2-family, in the center strip. Does that mean I can put a 4-unit in there if they
That's
double
what
it
I'm trying to figure out.
per acre? I mean, I have sewer and water, so it's not an issue, but does that allow me to build either 2 units on per acre or a 4-family, or do I get an ADU too? I mean,
And can you stack this with once you get to the 4-family, could you now get a 2.5-time bonus and
Yeah.
build 10 to the acre? Because
yeah, I mean, it's hard to sit here and then compare it to what we got and make it
the
all
community's
jive.
going to want to know, because it affects the value of their property and what they're going to do with it.
Oh,
You would
without a-
make decisions
Without a
based
doubt,
on that.
this,
Yeah,
but it's, there's too many unknowns.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's still quite a bit of unknowns.
I mean,
And-
I'm all for
Okay.
ADUs, and I'm all for, maybe a little more density in certain areas.
Do you need a little, is there a consultant? I'm very sensitive to how overworked everybody is.
The rural areas,
But
you'd
could
have to
somebody
beef up the
just
septic
look at our zoning and look at this thing and say, these are the
You gotta
things that
prove your
would
septic system's
change?
gonna pass.
that might be the limiting.
So the town
place
attorney
soils around
mentioned that, this
You're
is
gonna have
pretty
to go to a
big. It's
chamber
gonna,
system or something. Which is
it's
what I
gonna
read
pretty
in
much
here about
affect
the-
every aspect of our zoning ordinance. So it is gonna be a lot of work for us to do to make sure we comply with the bill. I think that, if the next step would definitely be to start getting more into the Freeport details. But unfortunately, I've been told to kind of hold off on that until we get more legal guidance.
Yep.
Yeah.
But isn't it likely that some citizen is going to bring a proposal that we're not going to know whether it complies or not? But mostly the project review board.
Well, we have
Whether,
this letter from Drummond Woodsum, and Freeport's one of the clients, correct?
Yeah, that just asks all the questions of what we don't know yet.
Well, I wonder if they do know more than we do at this point, and they would come and
yeah, so I think that it would be very helpful to have the legal team kind of give a better overview than I can. At least, they're working with a lot of municipalities on this. So, but I think what's been frustrating for them is that they're also kind of waiting for this rulemaking that will answer a lot of these questions they have. So before they give us guidance, they need answers to some of these questions. And I think that's kind of what's putting us on hold right now.
So when is the vote going to be in Augusta to make this final?
So this is already final. We just don't know about when the rulemaking is going to come out. I think it could be any day now.
Well, what can we, I'm trying to figure out what we're supposed to do about it.
I don't think anything.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like anything, except somebody's going to bring some challenge, and it's going to be confusing. But
Yep.
we can cross that bridge when we come to it. Could we talk about now you're going to go to ADUs?
Yes. Yep. Let me go to ADUs now. Okay. Right. So I kind of already started talking about this at our last meeting. I feel like this is kind of maybe the easier one. So for the ADUs, it basically says that an ADU will be allowed anywhere where housing is permitted and where one single family dwelling exists. So this does not apply to duplexes, but the town can decide to do so. That's optional. But LD 2003 is just for single family dwelling units. We can be more permissive.
But we already
And the
have
ADUs
exactly this. We already have this, right?
Yes, we do.
So far, nothing's different.
Well, there's a couple of things that will be different. We'll get into it in a second. And the ADU is also exempt from density requirements, which we also already have.
Yep.
So what changes for us? All right, we can't have additional parking requirements. So that's something that we have right now that we would need to change when LD 2003 comes into effect. The setbacks can't be greater for a single family house. For existing accessory structures, the setbacks would follow the one for the accessory structure. And the minimum size of the ADU is 190 square feet. So I think that might be something we need to change. And, for towns that have a rate of growth ordinance, the accessory dwelling unit wouldn't count towards that. We don't really have that going on right now.
And could you just go back? And basically, except for so yeah, we do have a parking requirement that would have to go out, and we'd have to check that minimum size. But those two in the middle, those are also already consistent with what we have. Isn't that right?
I'm not very sure about the setbacks for accessory structures.
Those would be easy enough changes, though, at any rate.
Yeah, and I doubt we have that. I would guess we have lesser setbacks.
I didn't see it in the change, but years ago, we had a requirement that the accessory unit had to be, couldn't be any more than 50 feet away from the main dwelling unit, and I don't know if that's still in there. And that needs to change, I think.
Well, we can talk about that on the next item.
Sometimes the garage is more than 70.
She's going right there.
Okay.
So, keep in mind that we can still impose a maximum size. that any of these units, like all the other provisions on LD 2003, they have to comply with shoreline zoning. They have to comply with wastewater and water. Subdivision standards are still valid, and covenants and deed restrictions are also still valid. So, all right. So that's kind of what I had for you guys for LD 2003. Do we have any more questions
Yeah,
that I hopefully would be able to answer? And
Well, maybe I just have misread this whole thing. There isn't a provision for a second ADU, is there? Is that what, I think I must have misread that on this issue that we were just talking about whether you could have 2 or 3 houses.
I think
right,
I thought
there
I read
isn't
one
a
in there.
provision for, it's one ADU.
And that's it. So there's
But the town can decide to allow more than one, but currently as it stands, the state saying we must allow one.
I thought I read somewhere where you could have one in the house and then one more outside.
That's what I was trying to figure out.
I thought I read that somewhere.
Yeah, that's
think
what I
that's
thought
part
I
of the,
read.
Yeah.
And
Well, that
that's
might
what
be like where
alarmed
they're
me.
allowed. So there, it could be next to the house, it could be on top of the house, it could be under the house, it could be also outside. I
Yeah,
think
but
that's
where
what
did
it's
it, but no, but look on page 11.
Septic system.
I thought you
On
could,
11, where it says adding 2 units to a lot with an existing home,
All right, so this is not for the ADU provision.
this is for that last provision that we were talking about. I
Right,
see.
and for this one, you would have to meet that density.
Density, so this only accounts if you have the 6 acres in the 2 acre zone,
whatever.
or whatever, yeah.
Right, for ADUs, the density, the base density does not count, which we already have that in Freeport, so.
Right, but so that could make a big difference where if we suddenly decided to allow multiple ADUs and we also changed the requirements around distance from the house, that could have implications in the rural district. If all of a sudden you had, on one lot, you have, a primary residence.
And 2 accessories.
And 2 accessories sort of scattered at different
2
corners,
acres.
that
That
could,
would change.
that could potentially change the,
Yeah.
so.
But again, then septic might limit that anyways, right?
Yeah, I think, I was actually talking to Nick Adams, was it yesterday or the day before about, and his take on a lot of this was that septic system design and, that's gonna be a big,
Limiting factor.
Because that's going to take, I mean, the new septic systems and the new rules are going to take up a lot of space.
yeah, and there's also, and I don't wanna get,
Yeah.
I don't wanna get out of my, well, I'm always a little out of my depth, I guess, but another thing that we may at some point need to take into consideration too are when we talk about sizes, there may be building code implications to the size restrictions,
Don't we have a minimum,
either minimum or maximum.
we have like a 400 square foot minimum now? It has to be at least 400 and some odd square
Yeah, I
feet?
don't remember what it is, but there are, there may be building code
We don't want a bunch of
implications
tiny
for,
homes.
yeah.
That's what they're looking at. You get 160 square feet, you got a tiny home,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is all
Yeah,
right.
so-
It's just on the side of the garage, but
Yep.
It's still it's a studio apartment for a single person.
yeah. There's nothing wrong with that.
Above the garage, that's a
Yeah.
pretty classic
Yeah.
thing. So if we don't allow, and we do allow 190 feet or not?
It's talking about it in here. I thought we had a larger minimum. I thought it had to be like 400.
Do we
or
have a
something.
minimum on the ADUs today?
Yes, we do. It's a larger amount. We can jump into the next item and then
Oh,
we can
you're
go
right.
over the details of,
Go for it.
Yeah, so agenda item
Sam?
number, what is it, 4?
4.
Oh, we're on the next item.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a lot. Anna, did you have anything that you wanted to ask about or talk about with LD 2003 before we move on?
No, thanks, Sam. No, I mean, I just, like kind of Mitch was saying, I'm not really sure what we're supposed to do with this information because so much of it seems like
Right, yeah.
it hasn't been
No, agreed.
determined yet. So I'm glad we're alerted to it. And
Yeah.
just
Absolutely. I think the real value of this is just in working through some of these ideas and trying to wrap our heads around where there are clarifications. I think if we don't have these discussions in some form now, it's going to be that much more confusing
You know
when
what's gonna
when
happen?
things are clarified.
Yeah.
So
Seems
And before
less
you move-
impactful than I thought.
potentially.
It's potential.
Yeah.
and
Cecilia, go ahead.
yeah, and there are actions the town could take. if they're concerned that things can go in a direction they don't want to go in, you could increase the amount of acreage you require per dwelling in these areas if you're concerned that you don't want more housing there. So those are things that you could think about whether, and see how that would fit into the existing comprehensive plan is whether, so there are some tools that you could use and there are some things that you still have the power to do. And with the ADUs, we can go over that.
Yeah, I think, just generally, I'm very, very much in favor of protecting the rural zones to the extent that we can and keep the rural character of the town where there is a rural character of the town and promote growth in the growth areas. The last thing I want to see is the town get chopped into little subdevelopments, where all the open spaces we have now are taken up by cul-de-sacs. I would much rather see the housing units that could exist there exist downtown. That's me personally. But anyway, item number 4 is a discussion of section 532. So now we're on the existing accessory apartments of the Freeport zoning ordinance, which we're going to change, we know, apartments to dwelling units, but it's a continued discussion on updating the current standards for accessory to apartments, also known as ADUs, to reduce barriers for development of the units and to comply with whatever the final rulemaking says we should do with LD 2003. Celia, do you have something that you had planned to kick us off with here as well?
Okay, well, so I don't have any presentations for this one because I think we kind of already went through it. So, I think like I mentioned on the last meeting, and Sam, I'm in very much agreement that we want to protect the rural areas. And, maybe if the board thinks we need some clarification with the, to whether the town should consider, increasing the lot size, the dwelling acres in certain areas. That's something that perhaps you could give us direction to do.
But that wouldn't affect this accessory dwelling unit.
No, it wouldn't. So moving on to the accessory dwelling.
I got it. You're just ending that. Okay.
Yeah. So the accessory dwelling units, I really see as something that could really make a difference in terms of the creation of affordable housing. So that's kind of one of the things that I wanted to see, that perhaps it might be like a low-hanging fruit for us to make changes to make them perhaps a little easier, regardless of when LD 2003, comes forth. So mostly what I'm presenting here is just some things for discussions. We perhaps shouldn't even push forward this until we hear back from, rulemaking and figure out what exactly is going on with LD 2003. I don't want to finalize this until we know about different legal things. But what I'm posing here is more just some policy questions for you to give direction on things that the town would still have the capacity to decide for themselves in terms of, how they want to go. So the first thing is that, some municipalities choose to allow more than one ADU per lot, or allow ADUs for 2 families or multifamily dwellings. And that's something for you to discuss, whether you think we should go that route or not. I guess considering LD 2003, you might not want to go there, given that there's already density increases throughout. So that was kind of like one of the questions for you in terms of this. As you can see on this just discussion draft that I gave you, I just started doing some updates so that it would comply with LD 2003. Of course, it still needs to go through legal review.
I think
but
earlier,
mostly just go ahead.
earlier there was a question of whether there's just one ADU, whether it could be both in the house and as an accessory structure. And I just took a quick look at the state statute, and it only requires the municipality to allow one
Yes.
Good.
EDU. So it's either in the house or an accessory structure, not both.
Correct. Yep.
I mean,
And then
yeah.
go ahead. this is really here for you
I
guys.
don't know
to
if you're
have a
asking a
discussion.
question here, but, because I certainly think that it's better to keep it at one. I think two makes everything a three-family zoning. It's kind of odd. And I'm very much in favor of more housing in Freeport, but
Yeah.
controlled.
I mean, at least in the rural zones, I would certainly.
I was
agree
going to say, we need to compare rural to
Yeah.
stuff that's serviced with sewer and water, I
Yeah.
think, in a density area or whatever they call it.
Well, but even there, I wouldn't want to just take houses and say they can all be three-family. I mean, I think that's
Yeah,
pretty
well,
radical.
Cecilia, I have a question for you.
Sure.
I live in an area with restrictive covenants, and the statute clearly does not intrude upon those private restrictions. Do you know what percentage of houses in Freeport are subject to those?
I don't know. We don't have any databases that tracks that. So
That's a
unfortunately,
good
that would
summer
really be
intern
something,
project.
somebody would have to do some very extensive deed research to find that out. Unfortunately, I wish
You have to read
I
the
wish,
tape, basically, of everything.
we
Okay.
could just plug that into the computer, but
yeah, that would be.
I know those are fairly common, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially in like anything post 1980s or 1960s, let's say, right?
Yeah, I'm just wondering to what extent that really dilutes the effect of this law for Freeport.
And it might, yeah. I mean, there's that, and also having to meet, water and wastewater requirements.
Yeah, that's going to be a big,
That's a big one too.
yeah.
So I've got a question about old number 8, new number 9, and any exterior alteration of a single-family dwelling unit. You get down the third line here, building shall preserve the single-family appearance, architectural style, character of the original structure, and shall be in harmony with the general appearance of the neighborhood. This was the fight next door, right here, at 22 Main with, is it, what's the scale and proportion? Who's going to define harmony?
It's subjective. It shouldn't.
That's right.
It shouldn't be there.
It shouldn't be there.
I mean, if
We either have some specific, requirements,
Yeah.
or,
If you rip your house down and decide to build a new one in your home, you wouldn't have a restriction on
yeah,
how you made it look.
I had a
Right.
Cape and I want to tear it down and build a
Build a modern house.
Exactly.
It's
Well-
not in keeping, so what? That's the way it goes.
Yeah.
Unless
Play
you're listed-
devil's advocate on that one, because I know this will come up in discussions about the design review ordinance. I think we do have to show maybe the smallest bit of respect to our design guidelines for preserving
Yeah.
this character that is hard to define downtown, that has sort of allowed us to keep the, the
Maybe
desirable
we need to
downtown.
find a better word than harmony is what I'm trying to
Totally.
think.
Yeah, totally.
How do we
I-
define, to meet the
Right, like. do
architectural
the-
style of the
yeah.
existing building?
Do the
More
windows need to
specific.
have the same pattern, grill pattern? Does the trim need to have similar
Yeah.
proportions?
I mean, you
to
need to
the-
be able to,
Yeah.
the applicant needs to be able to understand by reading the ordinance what he needs to do.
Otherwise, you
It's
can't
too
enforce it.
subjective. Yeah, that's right, that's right.
You can't.
I say it's harmony, you say it's not,
Exactly.
That's right.
And then we're,
50 people yelling.
Yeah, you
I
got
wanted-
to drill into the.
I wanted my Queen Anne Victorian,
Yeah.
next to my modern little ADU box.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
It could look pretty.
Yeah, so I really threw this out here for you guys to have a discussion. The one thing that is that I could see the design review standards applying to districts that require design review would require that for any kind of alteration regardless. But my only question is, how is this being applied to an area that doesn't have a design review? And whether you want to, because as it's written right now, all these pieces would have to be looked at, and it is. Yeah. I do want to point out that there is one person we do have one attendee, and I'm sorry, Amanda, that I didn't notice you before. I don't know if you had raised your hand to speak when we were talking about the other items.
We also have somebody in the
But
room
there's no-
too,
Yeah. Oh, okay, great.
which feel free
There's no hands
at
risen.
any point. Yeah.
raise your hand, right.
Can I ask a couple questions here, too?
Sure, absolutely.
So I think one of the, I think I agree that I'm not even sure we should be doing this yet until we change it once and for all, but I do think that that issue about owner occupied is a worthy discussion.
Yep.
I personally think it shouldn't be there.
You don't think it should be there?
I'm not sure it should be. In other words, if you have a house, you put an accessory apartment over your garage. The question is, are you now no longer allowed to move and rent your main house?
That's a fair question.
That, right now, it says you can't do that. You would have to kick the tenant out if you rent your house. And to me, once we're allowing it, I'm not sure. Anyway, so it's worthy of discussion. We don't, we don't necessarily have to resolve it, but I think that's one of the ones that.
No, that's a good point, because before you add the accessory dwelling, you could rent it out to whomever you please. But you add that, and therefore one of the units has to be owner occupied.
Right.
Yeah, that.
Yeah, you could move into the accessory apartment and rent the house.
Right,
Which
but
is
you have
quite,
to live in one of
you can't
those.
rent both.
Yeah.
And that seems odd.
Yeah, that's.
But I don't know, maybe might be good logic.
And the
Yeah, I think
enforcement of it.
that was a fairly common standard. I think ADUs are something that people, a lot of cities and, later towns started implementing as a way to preserve that single-family neighborhood without adding that feeling of multiple family. And I think there was some concern that you would have absentee landlords. However, you could just rent your house, and then what's the difference, right? Like, you could live next to,
I mean, we should have standards.
your neighbor could rent their house anytime they want. Does it matter if they're renting an ADU and their house or not? Like,
Right.
so it is really a policy decision for the town to make. The state, under LD 2003, you could still make that, as far as I know now, you could still make that requirement. But it's really a question to you of whether you think that requirement should be there and is necessary or is beneficial for the overall goal of the town.
Well, my initial impression is I agree with you. That shouldn't be there.
I agree with that, too.
It both offsets the goals that they're trying to pursue, and it could cause people to lose their investments. So it seems pretty
And we're trying to figure out what are the barriers. We all think, I think in principle, that it would be good if there were more of these, that it's sort of a win-win. It doesn't really wreck the character of a neighborhood. I mean, especially if they're not too big. I mean, too big, and then all of a sudden you really are two families. Right?
And every other house can have an absentee landlord, too, so.
Right, I mean, you could have a derelict next door because of an
Does it have
absentee
an AD?
landlord, and
Yeah.
you hope that there are other ordinances in town to keep their, garbage hidden.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point.
It's
The other
also
one is-
unenforceable,
Exactly.
according to
That's what I-
according to our code enforcement officer.
It's
Yeah, it is.
unenforceable.
Of course it is.
How do
Yeah,
you-
of course it is.
Yeah.
Right, well then,
Seems like we could all agree on that one.
Yeah,
okay, good, so strike that.
yep.
Okay.
I mean, that's, public hearing, that's, people will comment. And where's the size?
The size
Oh,
is
here it
section.
is. Oh, I see, you put the gray is what we're supposed to be talking about.
And that's subsection 8. I mean, it flat out says that, it's difficult to enforce, and also puts prospective homeowners interested in building an ADU in a situation where
There it
they would
is.
need to leave the ADU vacant if they were to temporarily relocate.
Right,
That's, yeah.
very
Doesn't make
messy.
any sense.
And right now, we have a one-bedroom maximum limit. And 40% of the size, and those are all, so could you, do you know what we know enough about LD 2003 to adjust the size stuff, right? At least in your draft?
Yeah, so there is a minimum size. That's that 190 feet according to, I guess, building codes. It could be amended by the state, I think, if the building codes.
Well, where's our,
But that's the minimum size. Ours is 320 minimum size. On
Number
this
7.
draft I gave you, I crossed that, I strike that
320
out.
is crossed out, line 7.
where is it? Where is it? In 7.
Yeah, Cecilia's already made that
Oh,
change.
I see, there it is. 320 is now no less than, and no larger than 40%.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so the changes I made were like changes to comply with LD 2003, as I understand them, and without legal review. But the boxes contain changes that you can make if you want, but you don't have to. So I haven't made those changes. It's
So
up
would-
to you to discuss and decide.
So we're down to 190 as a minimum?
190, yep. I don't think we should have a minimum that's higher than the state one.
But 190 is the size of a second floor of a garage. That's the right minimum,
Yeah.
to me.
I agree. And
There's no
it's,
reason why it
small,
has to
but-
be bigger than that.
exactly.
Yeah, I would be interested in seeing the maximum tweaked, not because I don't think 40% is a decent, but I just, there are certain situations like the one in the discussion box over here, where if you have an 850 square foot home, then that gives you a pretty narrow, a 340 square foot ADU is the max. I wonder if there's a way to do like a, shall be no larger than 40% or 500 square feet, whichever's larger,
That's
something
the
like
problem
that.
with percentages,
Yeah.
right?
So you want
Because
to
the
limit,
percentage is
you
based
want to
on
limit
what's
the
existing.
upside of the ADU? Is that what you're trying to say?
I would still want to limit the upside of the ADU, but I would also want to give a little bit more flexibility to people in smaller houses who might want to build a slightly, even 1,000 square, just 1,200 square feet, 40% of that's still pretty small. So if you had
So if you have a small house, you want a
slightly larger ADU.
ADU, then the proportion allows.
Yeah, but not by a huge amount.
That's the problem with percentage, right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's why you're
So-
almost.
So if it's less than a certain amount, the cap on the ADU would be a certain, we'll just put a square footage on it, right?
Exactly.
exactly,
Then,
yeah.
then you kind of know.
And then we just got to figure out what that number is.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, put a minimum square footage or 40%, whichever
Yeah.
one,
Whichever is
Bigger.
is
So if you have bigger, because if you have a 6,000 square foot house, that 40% gives you a nice big ADU.
That's right.
But if you have a 1,000 square foot house, maybe we don't want to limit it to a 400 square foot
Right.
ADU. Maybe we say you should be allowed to have a 600 square foot
Yeah,
ADU.
bigger, I got it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's.
And I think
then
in the past, it used to say 800, but then unfortunately, there wasn't much to the minutes of when they had those discussions, because, usually we only have minutes when it's a public hearing, and I don't have access to those recordings. That was in 2012. I could eventually
There was an
retrieve
upper,
those recordings, but they scratched out the 800 square feet, and that was also in the comp plan, but it was in a way to make it more flexible.
I think it was
But I
800.
don't know if they incidentally made it more flexible for people with bigger homes, but then made it less flexible for people with smaller homes.
yeah.
So that could have been what happened.
Yeah.
But those were very common, like very standard ADU regulations that they might have looked at a Model 1 that had those numbers.
I mean, we had a big fight about this years ago because there weren't any ADUs, and years ago, we fought to get them in because we thought it would help people, that could put one above the garage or do something with the house and help pay the taxes.
Right.
If somebody was single, living there, or widowed, or,
Fixed
widower,
income,
And it was a bit of a fight, but we got it through, you know.
But what we've learned is that the real barrier is the septic.
In the rural zones.
In the rural zones.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
And in the sewered zones, it's fine.
Yeah, I would think.
Even septic now, there's new ways of getting
Oh, of course,
around
of course.
clay, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just build an above-ground septic system. But
Yeah.
if you've got an older septic system and you've got to upgrade,
Yeah.
that might be a $30,000, $40,000
That's
ticket.
expensive, right.
Just to put on an ADU.
Right, right. Yep.
So, I mean, it's a reasonable barrier. You
Yeah.
have to be able to deal with your wastewater.
Right, for sure, yeah.
Yep.
You can't just overflow your old system.
What do they call them in the south? The straight pipe?
Oh, jeez.
55-gallon drum.
Scary.
Oh, there was an article I read a couple of years ago about straight pipes and the prevalence in a lot of communities. We definitely don't want that.
No.
So if the main house were super small, but you had a minimum square foot that you would allow for the accessory structure, could that be a structure that's bigger than the main house, or it would always have to be smaller? What if the main house was a tiny house?
Yeah, no, that's a valid point, yeah.
It could be big, then it should be bigger, yeah. I mean, you shouldn't be limited just because you have a small house.
But I guess at that point too, like who's making the determination on what is the accessory and what is the primary use?
I guess you could switch it, huh?
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah, I mean, if you
right.
have a 600 square foot, quote unquote, I mean, as long as they're both meeting the same requirements for building code, safety, they both have kitchens, they both have bathrooms.
Well, the
and all your-
principle
then-
was that a one-family wouldn't suddenly look like a two-family,
Yeah.
Right.
But the order of creation wouldn't be governing.
with like two houses.
Right.
Yeah.
In that scenario, though, your accessory unit is still limited to one bedroom, right? So you're going to build an 800, 900 square foot accessory unit with one bedroom?
Are they limited to one bedroom?
Well, but you could, I would think that
Yeah.
there's got to be a way where you could designate, you could, I
Yeah,
don't know,
flip
like
it.
take out a
Yeah.
closet or
Yeah.
something, and just flip it around, but
I don't know
anyway.
if it's still true or not, but if there's not a closet in the room, it's not a bedroom.
That's right, that's still.
Yeah,
that's
I've
still-
heard conflicting reports
No,
of
that's
that,
still, if you're an appraiser, you can't,
if you're an
no.
appraiser,
Yeah.
but,
You just call it an office.
yeah,
It's an
exactly,
office.
that's what people
You can
do.
put the little kids in there, but it's an office.
Right.
Just put
Oh,
down
so the
one hour.
principle is really that you aren't bringing kids in there. It's really to restrict children.
I mean, but that's the issue. That's what people are saying is, well, okay, so now these accessory units are just for single people, you can't really have a family in one.
Well, I think that is I think that was the principle.
Yeah.
A
Oh, okay.
Well, either that or at least a starter.
starter, a young couple, the retired
I wouldn't want,
couple.
if somebody has a baby, I wouldn't want to kick them out. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
Right.
doesn't make much sense.
Yeah.
right, I mean, that's
But
self-selecting.
it's not
I think, for
supposed to be
most-
big
most
enough for
people.
them to raise the kids there.
That's another
I think
thing, it's hard to enforce, I
You wouldn't
mean,
be able to kick somebody off if they had a baby because of our fair housing laws.
Oh, there
but,
you go, right.
It definitely does not incentivize people who, or adapt to people who would want to.
it's also not illegal to put a Murphy bed in an office, as far as I know, so,
Of
I mean,
course not.
there's all kinds of
But
ways
this is
to.
an attempt to try to steer what's happening there, that's all.
Yep.
Yep.
Encourage them to move out.
Yep. Yeah, so I
Of
mean,
course, historically, these would have been done like this for a reason, right? Because the whole purpose of ADU was to have it be ancillary, help grandma move in, something
That's
like
right.
that. But,
Right.
it's really a matter of, what the town thinks is right. It's definitely up to you to decide how you want to keep this. My personal opinion, and it is my personal opinion, is that ADUs are probably like the cheapest and easiest way to build affordable housing and accommodate communities. So, because oftentimes you don't have to start from scratch, or oftentimes you don't have to have the funding and be a developer. It puts that power of creating new housing into the community, which is, homeowner community.
I agree. I think that's spot on.
Now, there's another question I have in here, and we can get to it get an answer at a different time. But if I have an ADU, do I have to hook that sewer system? Say I'm on public sewer. Can I run a separate sewer line if I have enough land to that ADU, or do I have to hook it through my house?
That would be a Nick question. There's nothing in LD 2003 that I believe specifies that. You do just have to meet whichever regulations we have.
I would, this is an assumption, because of the way our sewer is metered, wouldn't you just need to run the water through your meter?
Well, your
water-
sewer's metered by the water.
Right,
but-
exactly.
but
So
a lot of people aren't on town water.
Oh, but they are on sewer.
Yeah, I pay the minimum because I have my own well. We were there before the sewer came by, and I didn't want to hook onto town water because I had good water there.
Right.
So my question is, I got 800, say somebody's got a big, long lot,
Yeah.
and they don't want to use their driveway, but they got enough land to put an ADU.
Yep.
So you don't want to pump it back to the house or something crazy.
Why do I
like
want to
that.
pump it way back to the house when I can have it farther away? Why can't I just hook into the sewer and pay the hookup fee?
Yeah.
Which we're talking about changing to promote.
I think you probably could. I don't see why you wouldn't be.
I think we should want that.
Yes, I agree.
But we don't have anything that restricts that at this point.
Yeah, we don't, but that's my question.
Yeah.
That's my question.
And I think that, no, I think that's a good question. I guess we go to Nick for that.
Well, or the
Or
sewer
the sewer,
board, or the sewer district.
district, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really up to the sewer district, I think.
Yeah. But that goes, so in the rural district, are they gonna have to do their own well for,
Depends on what their capacity is.
Yeah, it depends, yeah, I think it just depends on the particulars of the
the site?
of the site, you know, is the accessory
You got 50
dwelling.
gallons a minute, you wouldn't have to have another well, but if you.
Right,
Yeah.
right, or if the ADU is 40 feet downhill from the house,
Yeah.
then you start to think about, what are you doing with the waste water? Does it
Right.
come back up? You know, those kinds of things are very site-specific. I think the one thought I have looking at this and looking at LD 2003, you know, we don't necessarily know all the particulars of what LD 2003 is going to require as far as allowing additional dwelling units in every district, but is there a chance that the town wants to, or we, I guess, want to encourage additional, or allow additional ADUs in growth areas that are served by water and sewer, you know, and say, I don't know, if you're on public water and sewer, you're allowed to build 2 accessory dwelling units? I mean, are those sorts of considerations something the
Would
board
that be
would
the one in the house
interested
and
in?
one extra, add up to 3?
Yeah, I like that idea, like, as opposed, like, only one additional structure, but if you can squeeze one into existing buildings, or if you
One
can.
attached and
Yeah.
one remote.
Yeah, right, attached is probably better than
There's no
existing.
reason we can't go further than.
Exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
and that's where I'm thinking, I am fully supportive of protecting and not wanting to see these things, you know, dotted at far corners of lots in the rural district, but along the growth corridor as it's identified now, and my suspicion is that it won't change all that much in the new comprehensive plan. I mean, I think people feel generally in town like Route 1 is the growth area, and everything else is.
But the zoning right now doesn't really enable growth.
Yeah, and that's where I think
That's where the
this sort
comp
of,
plan
yeah,
has
this
to
sort
be.
of thing, I think could, I mean, I think that might be an interesting thing to pursue, is, you know, allowing an additional ADU in areas served by public utilities.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It's a good way, you know.
Was that all over town that served in public utilities, or just growth areas?
Probably just growth areas, because then you have South Freeport Village is kind of an interesting in-between, right?
Some of South Freeport Road is served
And
by
some, right, and some of
Yeah.
South Freeport Road. So probably just growth areas.
water. I don't know how much sewer just goes to, I don't know how far, sewer goes from what the
Yeah,
pump
there's
station
a
to
funny,
down to the main village.
the map does not, there's pretty big areas where it doesn't overlap, right? I don't remember, like, some areas have sewer and not water, and others have water and not sewer. Is that true?
Yeah, there's a lot of
We have
areas
water
that,
and not sewer.
Yes, so do I.
Yeah, water, not sewer. That's what I thought most South Freeport, yeah.
and,
The village
Where
has
is it?
sewer, doesn't it?
Which one?
South Freeport Village has sewer?
I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
Yes, they do.
Do they?
They don't have septic all.
Yeah, I guess they're pretty tight.
South
Yeah, you
Freeport.
might be right.
I thought that was,
I think that goes into that South Freeport,
Well, everything goes into that.
I guess so, but.
yeah.
Yeah, no, they are pretty tight. I can't imagine they
know.
all
I
have
don't remember.
septic in their backyard. No way.
No, I think the village itself is serviced by, I think.
Yeah, it's gotta be. I think you're right. Yeah.
I think it goes
the
down.
water and sewer doesn't really go up much to MDA and MDB.
No.
It's just
Doesn't go past,
leave downtown, it's
Right.
not much
doesn't go
there.
past Kendall Corner.
And that's where I guess growth areas, in a way, makes more sense than water, because if somebody wants to put in a big monster septic system to support their 3 ADUs, or 2 ADU, you know, whatever, 3 units in a growth area, maybe that's not the worst thing.
It's always easier putting in a well than a septic system.
That's right.
That's for sure.
I don't know, I've seen some wells that get very expensive.
I know, but in general,
Yeah.
you know, it's less
Yeah.
space, you know.
Yeah, right, you frack it, and then you end up drilling another one, and then you still need $15,000 of water
That's true.
treatment.
Yeah,
Seen it happen.
it could be bad.
All right, is that, Cecilia, does that give you some direction and a way to incorporate that into another draft of this, or do you want further?
So let me go over item by item here. So we think that we should tweak the draft section 7 about the 40% maximum size to allow for some flexibility, but I'm still not sure how that should be tweaked, if we should have a maximum size.
Or or 500 feet, whichever is greater.
Okay. Thank you.
500 feet?
400 feet? I mean,
Five.
Well, that's,
we're talking about the 850 square foot house.
right.
Is there a
40%
maximum
of
of
that
what
is
he
what?
can build?
You know, a two-car
So the only thing to
garage,
take into consideration
Garage is
here is
600.
600, 700 square feet. I mean,
What were you gonna say, Cecilia?
So the only thing to take into consideration here would be, situations where, for instance, you might have an 850 square feet house somewhere and somebody wants to, and there's an attic space that they want to make that whole attic space into the ADU, or the same with the basement. If you limit it to 500, then they have to somehow build enough closets in there or figure out a way to work it into their building.
yeah,
Yeah, 500 might be a little low.
I think so.
Yeah, I think maybe more
So-
like 7,
7 or 8.
So
Yeah.
40% of a 1,200 square foot house is 480.
Small.
So what if you have a 2,400 square foot home? 40%,
Is 960.
960. So,
I think at least 800.
yeah.
I can look at maybe I can poke around and see how other towns address, that flexibility in terms of like,
I mean, that's
if
20
you're
by 4,
building
that's a
like
good-sized unit.
Yeah.
an addition, or
It's
if
big
it's
enough
a
to have a
detached
kitchen,
unit, but if
sitting
it's,
space and.
Yep, in a bedroom.
Yeah, Cecilia, I like that idea of looking around. I think the board seems to think, generally speaking, something in the range of 800 to 1,000 square feet is the right ballpark to be playing in, recognizing that there's going to be a couple more rounds on this.
okay.
So if we
And then we-
start there and see what other towns, how they're treating it, that would be great.
See how other towns are treating it for the flexibility for existing buildings.
Yep. Yeah, maybe somebody's got a different idea too, like I don't know, quadratic equation that draws a nice
Please,
little
no.
curve.
No, we don't want any equation.
We don't want,
You know what I mean. There,
The house up, put an
Yes.
English basement under it.
Okay. And then so the board thinks that we should probably remove the owner occupied.
Yep, it's the whole
Section.
it's the whole section 8.
that's what I think. yeah.
Okay. All right. And then do we want to keep a maximum bedroom limit?
I see you asking the question now. And your little argument.
There's arguments for and against. And,
Yes,
and
there are.
It is, so it's up to you to decide what is,
I don't know. I think it's a little limiting. I don't know.
I mean, you could go to 2 bedrooms.
I think 2 bedroom is
Yeah.
more reasonable.
2-bedroom. Although if you figure you're gonna have 800 square foot as a minimum,
Yep.
That's
No,
a
no, no,
maximum.
It is a maximum.
maximum, yeah. I mean, can you put 2?
No, so it would only count for the 3,000 square foot house.
Right.
That's 1,500 feet on a floor, and then they rent out the basement, and it's 1,500 feet, and they could have 2 bedrooms down there.
Okay.
Right.
That's what you would allow.
Okay. So that would be not an ADU, it would be something.
It is an ADU.
Yeah, but it's not an accessory unit, building,
Oh, but that would, so,
within the building.
Well, I mean,
But if we
you
were
had
gonna-
a 4-car garage, and assuming your house is big enough that the 40%, you
Is
could
large,
do
yeah.
it.
Yep.
so I think another question
is-
that I hear in that discussion is, do we want to, should there be a distinction between ADUs that are within,
Detached and not detached.
I think maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
because it seems like there's sort of generally a higher tolerance for size and bedrooms and everything else if it's
We're trying to not say
visually
you can build
compatible
a
with the primary structure,
You
right?
can build a second house on your lot. That's not what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, that's,
Right.
And that's the danger of the 850 square foot house with the 1,000 foot.
yep.
Yeah.
I mean, assuming they've got the land for it.
Well, except that
And they
The
need- and they
land
need
does not
setbacks,
fall
too.
into this equation.
Well, land falls into the equation just in terms of setbacks
Yeah.
and lot coverage, yeah.
and lot coverage, yeah.
Yep.
What is the main concern? I guess I'm not.
I think my guess is it'd be that you're basically building two single-family residences on one lot.
Changing the character of the neighborhood is my guess, right?
Well, maybe, maybe not. Depends what they look like.
I don't see that as,
So you would be in favor of more permissive?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
And I would too, especially the interior part. That has no effect on
Yeah.
the character of the neighborhood at all.
Right.
Absolutely. That's why the
But-
bedroom is a little,
My neighbors have, it keeps changing, and it's a single family, and there's so much change in the parking and the coming and
Are
going.
these the uphill neighbors?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's just like, it's a boarding house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It changes the whole character of the neighborhood. You have to think about the consequences.
yep.
So you are,
I think it should be questioned.
Okay.
Because a lot of people like it, some don't like it. If you have families on your neighborhood, you're like, wait, who just came in? Who's leaving? Who's coming, going?
so is,
I'm also uncomfortable with the two
It's
bedrooms.
very dense. Yeah.
so, but are these actually separate dwelling units, or are they just running?
No, they're all in one rooming house. It's basically
But
become
they're
a rooming
unrelated
house.
people.
What?
Unrelated people.
Unrelated, totally unrelated.
So, but that's a whole separate issue.
Yes, this is
I mean, that's not-
enforcement. This is enforcement. That's what I'm questioning.
But you're saying that some of the same issues that you
Yeah, the minute you
see
have a
there-
two-bedroom apartment on your property, you have unrelated people sharing that place.
Possibly.
I mean, certainly, yeah, I mean, I know we're imagining the young couple with the baby, but.
You're saying it could be a young couple with a roommate.
Yeah. I
Just
mean,
two people.
But that's true.
See-
I mean,
I mean, they could be, though, they could just live on the
But
couch.
the point of, but when you live in I'm concerned about the people who believe they live in a single-family neighborhood, and that granny has a place there, or the kid lives over the garage. We've all sort of tolerated that as a good thing, and I think it's a great thing. But I'm not sure that having apartments in single-family neighborhoods is what the town will tolerate. I'm not sure I would want that.
Yeah.
Is there any way you could make a specification of like, if they have to be, I don't know how you would do this, but one, like a family for 2 bedrooms?
You can't.
would have-
That's
You can't,
impossible.
that's fair housing.
Yeah.
Okay. Right,
Define family.
yeah.
right.
I think your issue is a legitimate issue. I just don't know how we get there, or how we.
Well, I mean, maybe limit to one bedroom.
Well, I don't know. I mean, she's just got a neighbor who's, somebody's got a neighbor
Right.
that's just, running a boarding house.
Boarding house.
Which is a different deal than really an ADU.
That's not, yeah, we're
you can't
trying to
stop.
decide what are we saying is all cool.
Yeah.
And if you say a two-bedroom is all cool, you're basically saying it's a two-family, it changes the neighborhood quite a lot.
Well, it's similar to the Airbnb situation, which the town
Yes.
allows and
Right.
regulates.
Very much similar.
Yeah.
But it's not a problem in my view. In most cases, in maybe very few cases, it's a problem for somebody.
I just don't
It also depends on how much you all believe in affordable housing, because I think if you're gonna limit it to 1 bedroom, that doesn't do nearly as much for
I
affordable.
believe in affordable housing, but not necessarily at the expense of
accessory.
everybody's property values. There's a way to build affordable housing in this town if we have the will. We need to up density in specific areas and encourage that growth. But to say that every single-family neighborhood is now, has 2 families living there,
Well, then just keep it at 1 bedroom. I mean, I'm hearing, I think there's too much concern over where this would take us if it was about 1 bedroom.
I mean, the question is there a difference between 800 square foot 1 bedroom and 800 square foot 2 bedroom? There's 1 bath. Is there a big difference? I mean, that's what we're asking ourselves.
I just wouldn't want to eliminate the fact that, 2 brothers, 2 people, 2 whoever could split the rent.
Yeah.
With the price of rents, maybe a couple people that just don't have AMI, meeting this thing could say, hey, okay, we can each throw $1,000 in the pool here and we got a place to live, instead of, you paying $2,000 a month. I wouldn't want to, that's where you get to affordable housing in a way, you know?
Yeah.
Exactly, that's the principal goal here, is affordable housing, so I agree with you.
So I wouldn't want to, I mean, I understand your issue up there, and I want to know if that's happening I wouldn't want to stop what we're doing here because there's one or two of those issues there. That's all.
Yeah, I think that.
I understand your concern, and I agree with you. But I think what somebody's doing next door is what somebody's doing on any street with a boarding room, and how many are there, and how often is it going to happen, and
Yeah.
maybe if they had this opportunity, they wouldn't be running the boarding house.
It's just hard to stop. If
That's
you got
right,
800
that's right.
square foot, what's to say they just put in another bedroom and no one even knows?
Yeah.
What's to say they just put up curtains to separate it out and two people are living there? Go for it.
I just, yeah.
It's hard to. It's just that's a tough thing.
And if it's something that's disturbing, it probably violates some other law
That's
or
right.
ordinance
That's
that
right.
could be enforced.
Well, like running a boarding house does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I definitely understand your concerns, though. I mean, because
I understand yours too. I'm
Yeah.
not even sure how I feel. I'm just imagining the community.
And that's
Yeah.
why
You know?
why I said what I said at the top of this meeting, and why I said what I said to the council, because I think there is a lot of. I mean, this is it's a very long story, but which I won't tell. Don't worry. But through a long series of crazy situations, there was a piece of land behind our house that got sold, and there was it loomed large in my imagination the possibility that it would be developed, and I thought, oh my gosh, that would be so terrible. Like, we live in, we're great, we can walk to town, but we have woods behind our house. It's so awesome. That would, I have to do
Woods got
everything I
sold.
can. Yeah, basically the woods got sold, and I have to do everything I can to stop that from being developed. And I sort of, for 6 months or whatever, that, consumed a fair bit of my imagination of how can I make sure that, my kids or dog or whatever can run back there and enjoy
in
the
the
woods.
playing
And then eventually, this was long after the play. And eventually I came, and it's like, you know what? I live close to downtown. I live in a area where, you can walk, the library's right there. It's great. Density is the point. If somebody wants to buy it and put up housing back there, fine. That's fine. And I sort of came around to that. And I think that those kinds of, it's not that I want that necessarily on a selfish level, but there's a point at which we have to step back and look at what the goals are and what sorts of sacrifices we're going to have to make to get to those goals. And so I think, as hard as it will be sometimes to take the more permissive approach, I kind of think we're going to have to push ourselves a little bit. And then, so yeah, I hear the 2-bedroom thing, and I do think, but
Growth areas.
yeah.
Maybe that's
Yeah,
the answer.
maybe that's where we use the growth areas, and we say, okay, 2 bedrooms, 2 ADUs, one of them can be detached in growth areas.
I mean, I like this discussion, and if the sense of the Senate goes that way, I'd get it, I see that side. I just,
Yeah, I mean, these are they're tough questions, and everyone isn't going to be pleased, but.
So we haven't actually given Cecilia any hard numbers on any of this stuff. But
No,
talk
it's
about
an interesting
800. Let's talk
discussion,
about
and
800.
it is very tricky.
Yeah.
I mean,
You
are
know,
we
you
all
could
happy with
have-
800?
So 800 would be the max if it's greater than the 40% of the person's residence. Otherwise, if you got 3,000 square foot, you could build it
That's
40%.
right, that's right.
what if we just said a detached accessory dwelling unit shall be no larger than 40%, or 800 square feet?
Or 800 square feet? A
And-
detached one.
But if it's limited to detached, so we say, if you want to take your 1,000 square foot house and cut it in half and call one of them an ADU, is that is that okay? Because that's large. Well, I guess that's a bad example, because that would
Then you
still.
turn-
if it's
So if you want
limited to
take,
one bedroom, I'm not dying on that hill yet,
Yeah.
but if it's limited to one bedroom, it would make no difference.
yeah. I guess, but that's not a good example. So what if it were a 3,000 square foot house, and with no detached structures, you wanted to cut it in half and make 2? That's a multifamily.
That's a multifamily.
Multifamily.
Yeah.
So that's where that's what we're trying to avoid. is-
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the 800 square foot is a good threshold.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a pretty good sized building for a,
Yep.
small unit.
So whether it's detached or not, 800 square feet is still the,
Is the max, unless,
Unless it's an existing building.
Unless it's 40% of the.
right.
Right,
Oh,
right.
but a free, but even if you've got a 5,000 square foot house, can I build a 2,000 foot accessory apartment or as a detached structure?
currently, yeah.
Currently,
And I think you should
Oh.
still be able to.
yeah,
Yeah, if you got the land for it.
But you're calling it the max, it's really the.
But you can only have one bedroom,
exactly.
as currently written.
Right,
Well, that's why I want 2 bedrooms.
Yeah, I see your point.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yep,
You know, I drove into something for sale down in Falmouth, down 88, and they had, they had a 4-car carriage shed, and there was an apartment upstairs, I mean, 4 or 5, I mean, what's the harm?
Maybe it
you know?
was 2 bedrooms, right.
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah, I should know the answer to this is, yeah.
You see the
But how do
questions
you,
as
how do you
you-
develop if you have a carriage house and a garage and a
Yeah.
guest house and a, maybe.
You have enough land.
Yeah, I
Right,
mean,
but I don't know how that's,
I mean,
Well,
that's,
one-
be site plan approval or something.
One place is,
Neither here nor there.
do you know where you could find the most progressive rules? Could we look at like what the most progressive is and then see if
Portland,
we could
Oregon.
stomach it? Right, something like that.
Portland, Oregon, or
Work
South
back.
Portland is doing some very progressive things around this.
yep.
I mean, just see what that looks like. And
I mean, I would go maybe by the AARP recommendations. I think those are most progressive.
Yeah, is that the associated
Yeah,
Retired.
retired people?
yeah, but they're
Yes, yes, they're very pro ADUs. I think that's what I showed.
yeah, but
you
they're
guys,
pro
some of their
ADUs with
material.
the filter of older people.
Yes
wanna live
and
in their
no.
son- their
They,
kids'
they,
lots.
they, it seems to be, a lot of the materials they put out, it's kind of, I don't know why they got into this. I think it was in the beginning, perhaps because it is a way of accommodating older people, not only where they live, but also, their ability to make an income, perhaps and retire or have a
Yep.
Keep the house.
caretaker live
Exactly.
inside or a child
Pay for
with,
taxes.
maybe a child with a family. So,
Yep.
I think
multi-generational
maybe
homestead.
those are,
Yeah, yeah. So I like the idea of, me personally, 800 square feet, and I would go the 2-bedroom,
That's a separate structure.
separate structure, yeah.
And in an existing structure or an attached structure, let's call it,
Well, that's,
you get to your 40%? Is that where we're running our 40%?
Well, I think 40% could apply on either one.
Either one.
Right, so because you could say, in all cases, the accessory dwelling unit shall be no larger than 40% or 40% of the finished and heated portion of the single-family dwelling unit or 800 square feet, whichever is larger. Right, because that gives you, if you have a,
yes, whatever is larger.
that gives you, if you have a 5,000 square foot house, you can build a 2,000 square
800 is
foot.
40% of 2,000.
Yeah.
So
so,
So basically, if you have a 500 square foot
if you're
home,
under 2,000 square feet, you can build to 800.
You can build 800.
If you're over
Exactly.
2,000 square feet,
it's
you got
40%.
40%.
Exactly.
That's what that means.
Yeah, and I think to your question, in my mind, it's the same whether it's attached within the house or detached.
I think
You're
the
still
only-
limited by.
The only situation where I could see a difference is if you had a large attic or existing
Yeah.
basement space or something like that, where it wouldn't really affect.
We don't really change anything, you're just basically
Yeah.
converting living space.
But it is an interesting one because, like, to take my earlier example, if you had a 3,000 square foot house and you split it in half, you're creating a multi-unit, but under the guise of creating an ADU, if we sort of tweak
Yeah,
to allow a bigger unit in an existing.
in existing home.
So I don't know if we want, I don't know. That's an interesting one.
That's a good point, but that probably is rare.
Probably,
You
yeah.
know.
I mean, you could boost it to 1,000 square feet if it's attached.
Yeah,
Do something relatively minor to
Yeah.
give a little extra flexibility without
yeah, without, yeah.
going crazy.
An attached barn or something, you might want to fix up and convert.
Right.
Yeah, that's the other thing we could do is say, existing dwelling as of July 1st, 2023, and give a higher square footage for
For new,
a higher square footage for an ADU that's in a building that's existing
Got it.
as of July 1st.
yeah, that's a good point, right, so then you're basically, you can turn a barn into living area, because it's already existing as of today.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you catch that, Cecilia?
A little
And we
bit.
probably,
I think we're gonna have to have another go-around on
Yeah,
this.
oh yeah,
we're
for
going to
sure.
have another go-around, so hold the thought, because
Yeah.
I think we need some good visuals too on square footage and
Yeah.
percentages and,
Yeah, I think 800,
yeah.
whichever's larger, is that's a great starting point, and
Yeah.
I personally would be supportive of the 2-bedroom change,
I would too.
hard as it may be initially, but.
Sounds reasonable to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it gets us to a goal towards affordable housing.
So the one big thing we have not addressed, Cecilia, did you have something you were gonna say there?
No, I think it's just, like in general, we do still have all the LD 2003
Right.
to when I bring this back to you so
Right.
that it's more ready. If you feel like you need to, think more about this, then we could also, we don't need to rush this as well.
well, we're going to have
So-
time to think about it all when you get LD 2003.
Right.
Right.
There's no
yeah.
reason to
I'm not-
delay unless we have to delay. If we're forced to make decisions, we'll make the decisions. I'll vote.
Yeah,
So
and I shared.
sorry, Cecilia, because that we haven't, other than saying that we are not generally fans of the word harmony or preserve character, those sorts of ideas, we feel like there's a better way to do that. We haven't really talked about subsection 9. That's new, subsection 9.
I think that's the hard one, right? That's where you're going to have to you're just going to have to be detailed in it can't be subjective.
So at some point, this stuff will end up in the design review district, and we're gonna rewrite the design review guidelines.
That's
The
where.
design
But this
review
applies-
guidelines only count for downtown.
Well, the design review district.
Right, which is downtown.
Right.
That's
That's
all
right.
it is.
So.
We could use whatever language we get
Yeah.
out of that and plug it into the ADU so that it applies to ADUs all over town.
Maybe.
If we wanted to.
Well, if you wanted to, I think.
It's a good starting spot.
Well,
but-
at least in the design review districts, you should plug in something besides harmony, because we're already talking about
I have a suggestion.
making that language better, whatever it is comes out of design review.
Why don't you just strike after original structure? Because it says here, it should be
Well.
preserve the single-family appearance, architectural style, and character of the original structure. So it's saying that if you put a second structure on your lot, it should match your first structure. And to me, that makes, now I guess, well, yeah, if you put a tiny house in your garage, and in your driveway, and it doesn't match the structure, so you have that, there's two parts. One is, it's supposed to match the structure of and then it says, shall be in harmony with the general appearance of the neighborhood.
So I have a Greek revival cape, and I have a board and batten barn. I can't convert the barn because it's not the same architectural structure as the Greek revival house.
Shall preserve the architectural
that makes no
style
sense.
and
That's right, that's
character.
Yeah,
It's all a mess.
yeah.
I mean,
It's all a mess, you're right.
at the price of it, I don't think people are gonna build junky-looking ones. I think we sort of ought to leave it up to,
I agree.
mean,
I don't.
There's some,
Well, then you strike the whole thing.
That's kind of what I'm wondering.
I'm wondering that too. I
I mean, a separate entrance, or like,
we want to, you want to be able to allow for a separate entrance.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it says it preserves the front entrance, so it's trying to keep it from really looking two-family. That actually is a specific
Yeah.
guideline that you could keep, that at least you know what to do with.
Yeah, yeah.
That's true.
That's fine.
That's not exactly.
preserve the front entrance of the original structure. But I don't think they're saying, like, don't board up the door. I think they're saying, or the intent of this
No, it
here,
says
whether it says.
it shall be clearly secondary to
Right,
the main
yeah,
entrance.
that's
That's fine, that's fine.
I think that's fine. I
That's
think
fine.
that's a good way of
Yep.
of doing it.
Yep,
And then
I
just
like
striking
that.
everything else.
So you just say, any alteration, starting there, leave
Yes,
that part.
you'd strike before the any alteration.
Yep.
I think that's great.
Yeah, that's a good,
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yep.
Right, and it's true that, I mean, outside of the design review district, people could build, I mean, you could put up a shed, right, outside of the design review district. You could put up like a, Tesla cyber shed.
Yes.
That's,
Right, a Tesla
that's clad
cyber
in
shed.
mirrors and
That's right.
shiny,
Absolutely.
But you can't build an ADU that doesn't look,
Yeah,
you know.
and you can't limit it.
Yeah.
But I do like.
And then the
Mitch's
design
point.
review
I think
district will catch the design
the
review
design
district.
reviews-
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, all right,
Yep.
cool, I'm happy.
Okay.
That was good.
All right, any other questions from you, Cecilia, or anyone else for that matter?
Right, so like I said, I think we're gonna wait to bring this back to you until LD 2003,
Yeah,
and we get more answers about that. Let me just make sure, maybe I can ask you at another meeting, but to clarify with the sizing and the 40%, do you think that if it's detached, it should be 40% or 800 square feet?
Whichever is
And,
larger, yeah.
2-bedroom.
And 2-bedroom? Okay.
Yeah, and I think
Okay.
we sort of informally flagged for discussion whether an internal structure should be subject to different and potentially slightly larger size requirements, but I don't think we have, maybe that's where we look to other towns and just.
Yeah, that's further discussion. And don't forget, we want to strike out subsection 8.
Yes, I had that, thank you.
And what about a minimum? Do we want to have a minimum?
There is a minimum.
Well, that 190 is
190 is gonna be-
required, it's required.
Okay.
It just matches
that.
LD. I think
Okay,
that's.
yep.
We don't
That's
have a
fine.
choice on that
That's
one.
fine. Yep. Gotcha.
Very small.
It is very small, but it really does, that tiny house thing is an issue. I mean, that's exactly what it would be.
Yeah.
And why not?
Yeah. Okay. Item number 5, persons wishing to address the board on non-agenda items. Not yet.
You're just listening.
I have something because it's kind of been interesting being on Zoom. I've been like an outsider and watching, and I just have to say that I think everyone's working really well together.
That was a great meeting, or is a great meeting. It's not over yet.
Yeah, like I think everyone's just like, just the board seems like it's working very cooperatively, and Sam, you're doing a great job leading the charge, so.
Thank you.
It's a good board.
It's a great board.
It is.
So if there is an election, he's going to get reelected.
That's right.
Okay, I don't know, Robert, you were on the board when I first became chair, right?
I was, yeah.
I did not want
I
it.
like vice chair.
I did not want to be the chair, but
I know, you.
it ended
you
up.
do. You're great.
It's okay, I'll keep doing it
Did a
if you
good
guys
job.
want. It's fine.
Is there Amanda? Somebody was,
Oh, yeah, is there somebody on, we should check the participants
Does anybody wish to
window,
speak?
which we cannot see
We
from
can't see
here,
it,
but
right.
Yeah, we don't have any more participants.
oh, they
watching.
left.
it was so riveting.
Yeah, I did get a phone call, well, I did get a phone call this afternoon about somebody who was trying to replace their mobile homes, but they could not expand, but I need to talk to Nick about it. But they might speak at the next meeting.
Okay, as a non-agenda item.
Yeah.
All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Anybody else have anything? Motion to adjourn? So moved. Second from Rosemary, and then we have to roll call it. Andrew?
Yes.
Wayne?
Yes.
Robert?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Rosemary?
Yes.
Mitch? Anna?
Yes.
Excellent. The meeting is now adjourned.
See ya.
Month.
I thank everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you, Anna. I hope you feel better.
You too.
Yes. Hope everybody feels better who's not 100%.
The weather gets better.
It's supposed to be 75 at the end of next week.
When? 75? 75